Have you ever stopped to think about the image of a red balloon? I mean, it's so simple, so familiar, but there's something about it that just grabs your attention, right? And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's fascinating. You start digging into this idea of a red balloon theory, and you quickly realize there isn't just one out there.
Right. It's not like a neat little formula you can just pull up.
Exactly. But that's actually what makes it so intriguing. You see this red balloon concept popping up in all these different areas, from how we organize ourselves to how we understand our emotions, even how markets behave.
And that we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, we've been looking at this source, Texto Colado, and it really lays out a bunch of these different interpretations.
It's a pretty wild ride, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to try to make sense of it all together right here in this deep dive.
Exactly.
Ready to get started?
I am, definitely. Let's kick things off with a real-world example that I think really brings this whole red balloon concept to life. Remember that DARPA challenge back in 2009?
The Red Balloon Challenge. Oh, yeah, that was clever.
Okay, so picture this. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, they go and hide 10 red weather balloons in secret locations across the U.S. And the challenge is simple. Find them.
Simple to state, maybe, but not so simple to actually do.
You got that right. But here's the thing. The team that won, they were from MIT, and they didn't try to do it all themselves.
That's the key takeaway, I think. They realized the power of crowdsourcing. They basically tapped into this huge network of people online.
Right. They were like, let's use the way information spreads naturally on social media. You know, one person shares something, then their friends share it, and it just explodes outward.
And to really make that work, they came up with this incentive structure. They took the $40,000 prize and divided it up in a really clever way. So not only did you get money for finding a balloon yourself, but you also got a reward for each balloon found by anyone you had recruited into the network.
So suddenly it wasn't just about you finding a balloon, it was about building this whole team of searchers.
Exactly. It was like a chain reaction, and it worked incredibly well. They found all 10 balloons in, what was it, less than 9 hours?
Something like that. Yeah, it was amazing. It really showed how powerful it can be to distribute a problem like that and then incentivize people to cooperate.
Right. I mean, think about the implications. You could use a similar approach for all sorts of things, like disaster relief.
Yeah, imagine trying to locate missing people after a hurricane or an earthquake. That kind of rapid, coordinated response could be a game changer.
Absolutely. And you can see echoes of this approach in how we track the spread of misinformation online, too. Trying to figure out where those false narratives originate and how they spread. Or even think about something like Amazon, how they manage to keep track of millions of packages moving all over the world. It's all about distributed data and action.
It really makes you appreciate the power of networks, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. We tend to think of problem solving as this individualistic thing, but this challenge showed that sometimes the most effective approach is to tap into the collective intelligence of a group. So that's one way to think about the red balloon as this catalyst for coordination and problem solving. But Texto Colado also goes in a very different direction, exploring the symbolic and psychological power of the red balloon.
Yeah, and here we're getting into much more emotional territory. Think about the classic French short film Le Ballon Rouge. It's this beautiful, almost magical story about a little boy and his red balloon.
It's so simple, yet it speaks to something so universal about childhood.
Right? It captures that sense of innocence, that wonder, the way kids can find so much joy in the simplest things. It makes you think back to your own childhood, that special toy or object that held so much meaning.
It definitely evokes that feeling. And it's interesting how the red balloon, this light floating object, also becomes a symbol of the fleeting nature of those childhood joys. There's a bittersweetness to it.
Oh, for sure. It's like that feeling of watching the balloon drift away, knowing you can't hold on to it forever. But then on the flip side, you have something like Stephen King's IT.
Talk about a complete 180.
Yeah, that's a whole different vibe. In IT, the red balloon is straight up terrifying. It's like this symbol of dread, of manipulation. You see it and you know something bad is coming.
It's amazing how the same basic image can evoke such wildly different reactions. It really highlights the power of symbols and how our interpretations of them can be shaped by context.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, what is it about the red balloon specifically that makes it so ripe for this kind of symbolic manipulation?
That's a good question. Maybe it's that combination of lightness and fragility, coupled with that bold, attention-grabbing color. It can represent both joy and danger, hope and fear, all at the same time.
And we see this kind of symbolic power being used all the time in the real world, don't we? Think about branding, the McDonald's arches, the Coca-Cola logo. They're all designed to trigger certain emotions and associations.
Right. They're basically red balloons designed to attract our attention and make us feel a certain way. And then you have the use of symbols in political and social movements, a particular color, a flag. Even something as simple as a red balloon at a protest can carry a lot of weight, representing a cause or an ideology.
It's like these symbols become shorthand for complex ideas and emotions.
Exactly. So we've seen the red balloon as a tool for coordination, a symbol of both innocence and terror, and now texto colado takes us into the world of economics.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. They use the red balloon as an analogy for those speculative bubbles that pop up in markets.
Right, think about the dot-com bubble, the housing crisis back in 2008, or even the recent ups and downs in the crypto market.
It's like this frenzy of excitement and speculation that inflates these markets, just like blowing air into a balloon. And eventually, just like a balloon, they can burst.
And when that happens, well, it's usually not pretty.
No, not at all. The red balloon analogy also touches on those fundamental ideas of scarcity and value. If red balloons are hard to come by, they suddenly become valuable. But if everybody has one, then they lose their appeal.
Right, it's basic supply and demand, and you see that play out all the time with things like collectibles or even certain digital assets.
Remember all the hype around NFTs a while back? Some of those things were selling for crazy amounts of money, and then suddenly the market cooled off and a lot of people lost a ton of money.
Exactly, and you see similar patterns with tech startups. Some get these huge valuations based on potential, but if they don't deliver on that potential, their value can plummet pretty quickly.
It's a reminder that hype doesn't always equal real value. So that's the red balloon in the economic realm. But believe it or not, it gets even more interesting.
Oh yeah, Texto Colado also explores the use of the red balloon concept in the world of military strategy and intelligence.
And this is where things get a little bit cloak and dagger.
A little bit, yeah. In this context, the red balloon is often used as a metaphor for deception, distraction, and intelligence gathering. It's about creating something visible to draw attention away from something else.
Like a decoy, right?
Exactly. The source mentions those inflatable tanks they used in World War II.
Yeah, those were basically giant red balloons meant to fool the enemy.
Right, and you see this idea evolving in the digital age. In cybersecurity, they talk about honeypots, which are basically fake systems set up to lure in hackers.
Like a digital trap.
Exactly. It allows security teams to study how hackers operate and figure out how to defend against them. And then there's the use of AI for surveillance. They talk about looking for red balloon-like anomalies in data traffic.
So that could be something like a sudden spike in data being sent to a suspicious location, which could indicate a cyber attack.
Right. Anything that stands out from the normal patterns could be a sign of something nefarious going on.
It's like those AI systems are trained to spot those red balloons in the sea of data.
And the source even mentions a much more controversial application of the red balloon tactic, false flag operations. This is where events are staged to manipulate public opinion or shift blame. And just to be clear, we're not endorsing this kind of thing at all. We're just presenting it as one of the interpretations found in the source material.
Exactly. It's important to be aware of these tactics, even if we don't condone them. So we've seen the red balloon used for coordination, symbolism, economic analysis, and even military strategy. But there's one more interpretation we need to touch on, and it might be the most relevant to our everyday lives.
Right. Texto Colado talks about the red balloon effects in society and politics, basically how these attention-grabbing balloons can be used to manipulate an attention and shape our perceptions.
It's like that classic misdirection trick, right? You look over here while something else is happening over there.
Exactly. Think about how a major celebrity scandal can suddenly dominate the news cycle, overshadowing other important events.
It's like the media is shining a spotlight on this shiny red balloon, and we all get caught up in it.
And politicians are masters of this, right? They might make a big show of doing something symbolic, like releasing a bunch of red balloons at a rally, but it's all about creating a distraction. It's not actually addressing any real issues.
And think about social media. How many times have you seen some trivial debate or meme just explode online, sucking up all the oxygen in the room?
Oh, it happens all the time. These viral moments are like red balloons that capture our collective attention for a little while, but then they just float away. And sometimes that's fine, but other times it can be a way to avoid talking about more important things.
It's like those red balloons can prevent us from having meaningful conversations.
And the source even connects this back to the idea of propaganda. You know, how carefully crafted stories or events can be used to manipulate public opinion and shift the narrative. It's about controlling what people see and believe.
So as we wrap things up here, it's pretty clear that the red balloon theory is a lot more complex than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, it's not just about a bunch of red balloons floating around. It's about how we perceive the world, how we coordinate our actions, and how we can be influenced, sometimes without even realizing it.
At its core, it's about paying attention.
Paying attention to what catches our eye, what might be trying to distract us, and how those things can shape our understanding of the world.
So as you go about your day, I want you to think about those red balloons you encounter, both literally and metaphorically. What grabs your attention? What might be a deliberate distraction? And how does your understanding of those red balloons influence your decisions and your perspectives? Something to think about.
It is. It's about becoming more aware of how we're influenced and learning to think critically about the information we consume.
Because in a world that's constantly vying for our attention, that kind of awareness can be incredibly powerful. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.